that I am super excited about tonight, and I'm very happy to see the full room of people. We even had to put another line of chairs, and it was still not enough because everyone really wanted to come and listen to an amazing story of a musician, of an Analogue Maverick, and also a person who did run a tech business for a little while, just maybe a little over 20 years. And that business is obviously the York Data Services. Please meet Mark, who will tell about his journey. Mark Fordyce.
Mark, there you go.
Oh. Okay. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Thank you for coming down tonight. What a great location. It's such history to this building. History that I'm actually attached to, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. It's kind of played a part of my journey. So, as it says, that's who I am, Mark Fordyce. I describe myself as a musician, as a founder. I've founded several companies, sold several companies in the years. And cheekily, I think of myself as an Analogue Maverick, of which will become more apparent again later on. My kind of history with music, kind of like a bookend on both sides, music and Analogue, run hand in hand with each other. So the journey for me started with music. Now, I grew up in the 70s in Scotland. I'm dyslexic. And having dyslexia in Scotland in the 70s was not recognised. There was no real benefits apart from going to SeaWorld quite a lot, which is quite nice. Little side effects to that. And I was really kind of not so much denied, but never offered the opportunity of the kind of the education system and the education road that many people went down. But what I found was several teachers within my schooling system that allowed me to open up the things that I wanted to do, and that was my creative side, especially with music and art. I had a very good art teacher, Mr. Fisher, who allowed me to just do the things I wanted to do, not even in the curriculum. He would just let me, open up the cupboard of paints and whatever I wanted to do and stick things with glue, and he could just let me do it, and full of praise, which was fantastic. And the other one was the music department. The main draw of the music department in the 70s, in the particular school I went to, because it was in a building, it was separate to the rest of the school. And some of the older lads who were in bands, they used to stash all their beer cans in the piano in the music room. So we would gravitate towards that. And I quickly discovered that music was the thing that really sort of, that turned the switch for me. It was the thing that charged my batteries completely on it. So fast forward slightly to 15, going on 16 years old, leaving school with not a lot to show for it, apart from a flair of where to hide cans of beer and a piano. And my parents moved to York, and me and my sisters along with them. So we arrived in York, and the first thing that I kind of set out to do was to find like-minded people. And that's something that's the theme that runs through my life, is finding like-minded people, and it'll be the same with yourselves. And if you haven't had that thought, you should have that thought, because you should gravitate towards the people that are very similar to you, and they will rally around and they'll help you in your journey. So arriving in York, fresh face, I set out to find other bands, musicians in and around the city. And at that time, there was a vibrancy happening in the city. There was so much great music going on in many, many different venues, including the Bonding Warehouse, where at least 1 or 2 nights a week there'd be live music happening here in this very room. And this is where we would go to watch the bands. And I quickly decided, I found another bunch of musicians who were very like myself, and we created a band called The Mood. And it was a band that was to begin with, very quite guitar-focused, indie-type guitar, pre-indie, really what was coming out of the back end of the kind of the punk wave, post-punk, and what was kind of happening with that. So we got together, we rehearsed, and we actually started rehearsing just across the road in a place called Bishop Hill Senior, which is an old school, I think it was, at once upon a time, but then became derelict. And the person that owned the building thought it was a great idea to rent out this derelict building, which was falling apart, to bands who could just rehearse to their heart's content and smash things up and do whatever they want to do, because you couldn't destroy it any further than it physically was. So we started rehearsing, then we went out and we started playing live gigs. And it wasn't long before we started to get a really good following. My sights were all set on just more than being in a band. I wanted to be something that was going to go places. I wanted to be on top of the pops. That's what I wanted to do. So we did it. In 1981, we signed to RCA Records on a major recording contract. So back in those days, when you look at the terms of what people were getting on contracts, so we signed to RCA for £500,000. Which was a lot of money back in those days, and certainly when you kind of compare it to now, it was a pretty significant deal. And that took us from York to London, and off we went on our journeys. And it was a whole new journey, a whole new meaning, a whole new things to learn. We went straight into one of the best recording studios in the world, called SARM Studios. And to give you an indication of how cool the studio was, it was owned by a guy called Trevor Horn, who's probably one of the most famous producers in the world. And one of the tape ops and kind of the young guy who was running around helping with things and setting up keyboards was a young guy called Hans Zimmer. He did quite well. So there we are, we're in SARM Studios. The huge pressure of having to deliver. So, and we did deliver. We recorded within that complex at the same time as we were doing our first single, which is There a Reason. ABC were recording Alexa Kind of Love. Same time with Spandau Ballet were doing their early recordings. And again, it was a real kind of great atmosphere. You're reading the press about bands being against each other. It's not like that at all. Everyone helps each other around. So we ended up, hanging out with and going out with Spandau Ballet, Duran Duran, et cetera, on it. And that took us to releasing 5 singles and 2 albums and more than 1 million records sold. That really taught me about how to reinvent yourself, how to have a huge amount of tenacity, how to work with other people, how to manage that ebb and flow of being in a band and actually having to produce product. And getting involved with the designs for the record sleeves and things like that. And again, we were very lucky because we were on a major recording contract, we had very deep pockets. The photographers that we worked with at the time were some of the world's greatest photographers. Jill Furmanowski, Sheila Rock, Jared Mankiewicz. Some of these are legendary people who are famous for some of the greatest photos you'll ever see of the Rolling Stones is taken by Jared. So yeah, that kind of took us on that part of the journey, and then that lasted from 81 to 84. The band actually split in 85, but at that time we become so fractured and not really kind of getting on as you do when you live at the back of a bus with people and the tiny things become big things. It ran its course, which was fantastic, and we had a great time and lessons learned from it. From there, when the band came back to York, I stayed in London. As did Eric, one the other keyboard player. And I worked in the music industry for another 10 years. I continued working in SARM Studios. That's me at 17 years old in SARM. That's me at at Abbey Road Studios, Studio 2, the studio of the Beatles. Working in there. I had several production contracts and I had several publishing contracts. I used to write and produce for other people. For quite a number of years. And then I worked my way through the industry into A&R. So I was A&R for Sony Records for a while. I then ran my own label for a while, and then I got into management and signed several bands to Mercury Records. And it was pretty good hanging on that long in the industry, to a real industry that was kind of going through a state of flux. And earning a living. And that was just enough to keep your head above water, to live in London and keep doing the things you're doing. That's what I kind of did. So kind of 10 years on from that, another massive change happened. This thing became real. So I'd always worked with computers in the studio, so I was a very early adopter of computers, and especially Apple computers. They were prevalent in all major studios. But it wasn't until this came along that it kind of changed everything, because again, it was that same thing of that punk ethos, that anyone could now get involved in this thing called the dot-com boom that was happening. And again, being in the music industry around the mid-90s, a lot of my peers and a lot of people in the industry were jumping ship or stepping sideways into the amazing thing called the internet and the dot-com boom, first time round. So I nipped out to PC World, and I bought the first shipment of the iMac that came out, and I set to learn everything it could do. And out of that, I learned how to code websites. I got quite good at Flash. I became a really good Flash programmer. You can remember back in those days. So that kind of really woke me up to other things that were possible. Now, at that time, I was living in and around the Finchley Road in London, and I had a very good friend who had a hair salon in the Finchley Road. And one night we were talking, as you do, about what we'd like to achieve. And I was telling him all about these things that I was doing with my computer and this whole new industry that was happening. And we're seeing all these amazing companies that were getting valued to ridiculous amounts of money. And I was saying, we should do something like that. We've got to come up with an idea. We're in a pub, there's a beer mat, let's do something. So we wrote down some ideas. And by the end of the night, we come up with this concept of, wouldn't it be great if we created a website that could follow the profile and DNA of celebrities, and you could find out which hairdresser they went to, which salon products they used, which designer they shopped at, which gym they went to, what sort of shampoo products did they use in their hair. And so we came up with this concept, and we called it Wish to Be. And the next day, my friend's back cutting hair, and I'm back trying to scrape by with paying for the iMac. So my friend's cutting hair of this lady, and he's saying, oh, yeah, with my friend last night, we've got a new business model. We came up with this great idea. We told her all about this idea. This lady was the wife of someone very high up in Greenwich Capital Banks. So the next week, we got a message to us that they wanted to meet us. I thought, they want to invest in dot-com companies. We sound like a good company to invest in. Now, we hadn't done anything apart from come up with a name. So very quickly, I had to go and learn how to actually buy a URL. So we came up with a kind of a combination of a wish, a to, and be, wish to be. So we got that, and then we set up a meeting the following week. So there I am at this cafe across the road from the hairdressing salon, and I'm waiting for the guys from Greenwich Capital to come and meet me. And what I said before about when you meet like-minded people, and people will rally around to help you, and opportunities come your way, and you should be ready to capitalize on opportunities. So while I'm sitting there was a guy called George Hammer comes across the cafe. Now, I'd met George a few years previous, because actually I knew his wife more than I knew George, to be honest with you. And I knew George was an extremely successful businessman, and his wife was very beautiful. She set me up on a blind date with, does anyone remember Natalie Imbruglia? She set me up on a blind date with Natalie Imbruglia, so I've got a lot to thank her for. So across from the cafe comes George, and he's walking with this rather exquisite elderly lady. And he recognises me, comes over and he goes, hi George, how are you? And making small talk. And so I'm very well. I've got this new business that I'm doing, my opportunity to sell. So I'm telling him about the business. And he goes, that's fantastic, it's really good. Now, unbeknown to me, until he then opened his mouth, that George had just sold a business of his to Estee Lauder for, I think it was about 560 million. And the lady that he was with was the senior vice president of Estee Lauder, a lady called Jeanette Wagner. Jeanette, being a typical New Yorker, very, very friendly, she got a card out and she put it on the table and she goes, if you're ever in New York, look me up. Thank you very much. And off they trot. 5 minutes later, Greenwich Capital come in. There's 5 of them. So I'm just sitting there, and they said, well, tell us about your business. And I goes, well, I can tell you, I just finished a meeting with the senior vice president of Estee Lauder. And we fly to New York next week. And the upshot was, by the end of the meeting, we'd sold 10% of the company for £100,000. And that was my first £1 million valuation. So we went on to, thank you. We went on to build Wish to Be. We put together a really good team. We worked out of Greenwich Capital's offices in the city, in London. As I say, we got 100,000 for 10% equity, first £1 million valuation. But then the dot-com crash happened. And we had second round funding that was lined up, and the funding didn't come at the end of the day. Although we did go to New York, and Jeanette did wine and dine us, and Jeanette did invest a little bit of money into it as well. So those sort of things came to fruition, but not enough to save the business, because we, a true fashion, we blew everything that we had in putting the team together and living in London and being a little bit extravagant. So that journey kind of came to an abrupt end, almost as quick as it started, really. But a great journey nonetheless. Now, I'm on a tube station in London, figuring out how I can tell my then girlfriend, my now wife, why I'm coming back to York, because she was going to move down to London, and now I'm going back up to York. My mobile goes, and it's a guy called Jim Johnson, who was the CTO of Greenwich Capital. And Jim has now since then left Greenwich Capital, and he's joined a company called Cantor Fitzgerald, which is the world's largest intermediate stockbroker. And he says to me, why don't you come to Cantor's and build an internet division? And I went, okay, right. I could do that. Of course I could do that. And the more I thought about it, I processed, I think, yes, Jim, I will come along and I'll build a company for you. And he said, I'll fly to New York next week. He said, this is my PA's number. She'll sort the figures out with you, and we'll get it done. And the phone goes down. I'm thinking, God, that's amazing. What an opportunity. I then call the PA, and she tells me what I've got to be doing, and then she gives me a figure of what I'm going to get paid. And I'm thinking, I can just get by on that. That'll be fine. So Jim comes back from New York. I start at Cantor's. I go and see Jim. And he says, how's it all going? We worked out the deal with you. And I go, well, it's quite good. I says, but it's a little bit low. It was actually £10,000 they were offering me. And I said, a little bit low. I said, if we can squeeze it a little bit more, it'd be good. And he said, well, maybe, 1,200. Would that be all right for you? And that was that moment I realized that was a month. So back in the mid-90s. And I'm thinking, well, fantastic. So anyway, I started at Cantor's. And I helped build Cantor Index. Spread betting company was the first one we put out the blocks. And as a side project, at the time they were building, that's One America Square in London, the European HQ of Cantor's. They were building a trading platform between One America Square and the Twin Towers. And I started to get involved in that project, and that's where I learned about networking. I ended up heading the team up, which built one of the fastest trading platform in the world between One America Square and the Twin Towers. So that took me a year to put that project to bed on it. And by the time I'd finished it, then the day that I'd finished and handed everything over, it was trading about $6.5 trillion a day across the platform. And I did that from, the only way I describe it is creative thinking. Because when they sat down and they spoke about the problems of actually making a trading platform very fast and very efficient and very quick, it's all about latency. And they were showing me designs of how they built the networks. And I'm going, well, surely if you wanted to go from A to B as fast as you can, you cut as much of the bit in the middle as you can and cut the latency out. We started adopting new methods of doing things. That was a huge learning curve for me. That was the next part of my journey that kind of, I'd taken in the creativeness of what I'd done previously, and suddenly I'm now in the world of building networks, which I found really exciting. I love networks. I love the way the machines talk to each other. So that led me on to coming back to York and founding York Data Services. What is York Data Services? It is a business ISP, and the initial idea was to build the things I was doing in the City of London for huge organisations like Cantor's, but doing it for SME market, doing it for the small guy, giving them the best possible tools they can to trade they want to do. And that was the idea, that was the naive idea of York Data Services. Now, me being me, if you want to start an ISP, what people would normally do is they would go out and find another ISP and they would white label it and then they'd resell it. I didn't want to do that because I love being in control. I'm a control freak. So I set about building a network from the ground up, a network that we owned and controlled. So we actually set out building into Docklands in London, bringing our own private connections from London up to York. So we were the first company to bring gigabit into the city. We started to build out on-net locations. And we sort of built our network around this idea of setting ourselves up to become the region's leading business internet service provider, of which we did. We operated and built our own network. We had multi-gig fibre coming to the city. We had 100 gigabit speeds between York, Leeds and London. And a fully resilient ultra-low latency network, the ultra-low latency that I'd learned to do in London. And we became a tier 2 ISP, and that's the same as Virgin and the same as, kind of all the big players, same as BT on it. And we did that for quite a number of years. And we started building out on-net locations. So we started providing connectivity into business parks around the region and to business centres, multi-occupancy buildings. And then we actually then built out a gigabit wireless point-to-point network across the city. Like quite a great achievement, really, at the end of the day, what we managed to do and push the boundaries on it. And it became a real business, and you had to kind of grow up and not just do things for the sake of because I wanted to do it. I had to employ staff and I had to learn all the things of how to employ staff, how to retain staff, how to get rid of staff and replace staff, all those sort of things. And we ended up delivering to over 1,000 businesses across the region in the UK. And then when we got to that point, I thought, when COVID happened, there was a need for people to work at home. So why don't we capitalise in the home market? So we then launched a consumer brand called York Fibre, powered by the York Data Services Network in partnership with City Fibre. So providing broadband to over 64,000 homes. And that was the next part. But by then, I'm kind of 21 years in now, and I'm thinking to myself, 21 years old, it's got to be time for a change. It's got to be time for something else to do. I've taken it as far as I could. And I think when your heart stops to be in something, no matter how good the day-to-day is, when your heart's not there, it's time to move on. And I think the 21 years coincided with the peak of the arch in terms of what was happening in our industry. There was not many independent players left, for a lot of consolidation going on, people buying companies. And we were right at the peak of that. And for the past 2, 3, 4, 5 years, never a week goes by when someone doesn't come up and knock on our door and say, look, we want to buy you. And I've always gone, nah, some of them too much fun. Why do I want to sell it? But now, 21 years on, it was time for a change. So in August 2024, I sold to Communicate Technology, who are an IT, telecoms and cybersecurity company. So I sold it to companies to put it into good hands. It allowed York Data Services and the team to realise their aspirations, their ambitions, and take the company to punch hugely above its weight and be part of a larger organisation, which is going really well. And the integration has worked exceedingly well on it. I am kind of still involved, arms-ish length at the moment. I'm still deciding on how that's going to work out. But to all intents and purposes, I've handed the baby over, and now it's someone else is taking that, building upon it, and making it a far better beast. And I think it's one of those things as well, is knowing your limitations. And I knew my limitations had got to a point where I couldn't take it further than what my ambitions really wanted to take it. So better off in a new home. Communicate is equity backed. They are acquiring. They've acquired another company since they bought us. So they're on a great journey on their own, and off they go on it. So really, for me, it's all about what next. What do I do next? And it's fairly soon. The paint hasn't really dried on that sale, but already I'm thinking of the next thing I want to do. So I'm just doing what I know best. I've started a record label called Sugar Star Records. And I'm thinking, what am I going to put out on my new label? I know I'll put out my new label. Let's go full circle, 44 years ago. So I bought back the master tapes from The Mood, my old band, from RCA and Sony, and I've had them baked and digitally transferred and remastered from digital masters, and that's what we're putting out. So we've actually now released a brand new, which is now out on all streaming platforms, digital downloads. You can buy vinyl, real vinyl, clear, real vinyl, and CDs. Actually, CDs are selling really well at the moment. I can't believe how well they're selling. It's crazy. Actually, CDs are, well, I mean, streaming, everyone here streaming, but it's outperforming the vinyl. I thought the vinyl would do better. But vinyl's doing very well, but CDs is, and we're selling at the moment to, a dozen countries across the world, a lot in America at the moment. I'm finding myself now kind of doing interviews and different various YouTube channels that run 80s things throughout the world, which is fun to do. So that's kind of my story, which just continues, doesn't end, it continues to the next part. And then the bit about why I call myself an Analogue Maverick is because I've got a weakness. And my weakness is them. And that's just part of my collection. I've got a huge collection of old vintage analog keyboards and synthesizers and drum machines. And so that's a 1976 Mini Moog, if you're interested. That Moog there was signed by Bob Moog himself. It's the last machine that he worked on personally before he died, signed by him. I bought that off Robbie Williams. That's on some of Robbie's hits. And I've got an 808 drum machine, very, very rare beast. And just next to it in the corner, there's a drum machine called a Lynn drum machine, very, very classic. They made about 500 of them in the world, and there's very few left, and that's one of them. All playable, all doing things. I don't like buying things for the sake of just seeing it on a shelf. It gets plugged in, it gets abused very nicely. So there you go. That's my story. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Mark. I think such a great insight. I think I've got to pull these chairs over as well. It's one of my jobs I've been given. Grab one of these.
Got it.
I'm excited. I don't recognise any of this part of the keys, but I'm sure you could tell us lots about it. But thank you so much for so much insight. Just to introduce myself, I'm Chris Lenardi, the Ecosystem Manager for Barclays Eagle Labs. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later on, because I think the interesting bit is what Mark's been sort of talking about. Just at the end there, you kind of talked about kind of your mindset of you wanted to kind of physically kind of get involved with things. You're looking at like kind of overcoming challenges. Can you just tell us a little bit more about how you kind of throw yourself into those situations? Because I guess it could be quite easy for people to sit back, kind of go, I'm in a comfortable position, I'm paying my mortgage. How do you kind of take that next step of going, okay, this is I've got an opportunity here, and how do I make the most of it?
Naivety.
Okay.
In a bucket load of naivety. I think it's a wonderful thing is being naive. I think when you look at the world through the eyes of a child, before all the kind of the risk is chipped away from them, is sandpapered off. You look at the world in a way where anything's possible and anything's achievable, and I think you've got to keep that. And so when an idea comes along, an opportunity comes along, there's going to be a certain aspect of educated risk built into that. But overall, the one thing that I find talking to our entrepreneurs is that capacity to have naivety in their thoughts and thinking they're the only one doing it. And they might not be. They might be one of 20, but if they're doing it passionately, they'll be the number one of the 20. That's what it's about.
Yeah, and I guess it's that bit of passion as well that you talk about. That's kind of, whether it's something like this and it kind of motivates you to then go and create your own brand and yeah, you kind of go full circle.
That's the control freak part.
Okay, got it. You want to know what you're doing next.
Yeah.
I was kind of curious. I mean, if there's a range of people. I recognise some faces and I don't some others. But for kind of budding founders or people that are kind of going on that scale up journey, if looking back, what would be your advice, or even now when you're looking at exit and some of the things that you wish you could maybe put in place 21 years ago or over those 21 years?
Yeah, I think it's knowing your limitations and accepting those and getting the right people in that can fill the voids that you lack. It's never a singular journey. And it's probably one of the things I probably look back on. I've done a lot of singular journeys, and I've probably held on to things a little bit too personally. And on some of the journeys that I've done, where I've seen other people who have been quite coldly and made decisions based on different things on it. So it's and one of the differences, certainly with my experience of exiting a business, is that although I knew the time was right, it was more of an emotional feeling. It wasn't a logical feeling in terms of, I'm going to sell this business, I'm going to get it fit for sale. I was still hiring and buying up to 2 weeks before I sold the company. Completely wrong thing to do. Everyone scales things back and gets profit up, and and I was doing the exact opposite because I was loving what I was doing, and it was just selling it was almost like a byproduct.
Yeah. I think that's such a massive challenge we hear from founders kind of regularly, is like access to talent, and how do you bring talent in? When's the right time to not, to maybe let people go?
Yeah.
Any particularly difficult situations you can think, either early days or later on, when you can?
I'm hopeless at sacking people.
Okay.
I just have people hanging around, and I think of things for them to do. Rather than get rid of them, I'll give them another title on it. That's not a skill I have at all. I'm the wrong person.
That's where you hire the person in to do it for you, I guess.
Yeah.
They've got a bit more experience there. I say experience. I feel like you're pretty experienced with 21 years under your belt. I guess there's a kind of a change in the world of investment. You kind of hear your early story of running into somebody and having, 100K kind of ready to go. It seems like the environment's quite different for founders now. Money's more wrapped up with VCs for longer terms. They're not seeing as many exits. How do you see those kind of relationships with investors and founders now? Have you seen some changes?
I think it has, yeah. And I think the days have gone, where the early years of watching Dragon's Den and all these kind of derivatives, where you come up with a business model and you desperately need £100,000 or £200,000, otherwise you can't do anything. I think people look at things in the wrong way, and they have these grand plans, and unless they can get the investment to fit the grand plan, they don't relook at it. And I think that's certainly from my experiences, in most of the businesses I've been in, apart from when they gave me £100,000 for an idea, I bootstrapped everything. And I really believe in bootstrapping, and I believe in getting involved and rolling your sleeves up with the business, and not just investing in something, not just giving money over. It's kind of being part of that, part of the objective. In essence, helping how your money is going to get spent within the investment, but also the passion you can give to it. It far outweighs the financial input.
And I guess that kind of leads on to that kind of mindset of the founder and kind of seizing those opportunities. Is there kind of, I guess, from an investor side or from those key staff that you've brought on, do you see particular traits that kind of leads to more successful kind of either entrepreneur or entrepreneur?
I think, tenacity, the ability to see things from different angles, because when you that comes from experience. And if you can look at a business model, often when you see it from a different angle, very similar to when I went to work for Cantor Fitzgerald. I came into Cantor's as a creative, and suddenly I'm doing networking, but I wasn't really doing networking. I was just being very creative in what I was doing, seeing it from a different angle. And I think that a lot of entrepreneurs have that ability to be able to almost like, pull something apart. If someone gave me a business model or a business idea and I had time to think about it, I could probably pull it apart and put it back together in a better way. And that's a kind of a skill that you gather over the years.
Okay. And I guess it kind of leads on to the question around where's York heading? I guess is a very large question. We've got York Central. Obviously, we've got Ben at the back with York Creatives. We've got a very creative city. We've got York City of Media Art kind of on the wall here. Where do you see the opportunities for the city and I guess the wider region as well, with things like combined authority and York Central coming in?
Oh, very good question. How long's a piece of string? York's been wrestling with itself for quite a while now, and in the early 2000s, it was very good at reinventing itself as a knowledge economy away from the manufacturing that came before. I think we've almost hit a new wall of we have to be able to climb over to create something new. There's not the money around anymore that there used to be. There is not the friendly council that there used to be. There's not enough people in the right jobs to make decisions, that have the experience to be able to support businesses. So I suppose the answer to that is you just got to get on with it. You just got to, in spite of what's happening and what you're doing, you just get on with it, and you do, because there are some amazing stories in York over the years, as we know from the other speakers that I've been to in these events. York is an amazing place, doing some fantastic things behind closed doors. What we're very good at is not shouting about it. We're not very good at sharing the information. We've got, again, this is another great addition. I'm hoping that people that start businesses in here shout about it and spread the word and be open and share. Not like some other places we have with the Science Park and with the Guildhall behind closed doors, and you're not aware of what's going on. And that's great for the business, because the majority of businesses in York will be doing business outside of York. Especially in the digital economy, especially with software and development and data that resides anywhere in the world. And we're as good as anyone to be able to build those things. But sometimes it's nice to be able to share that and open your door, because, again, allowing someone else to see it from a different angle opens up opportunity.
And I would love to go to the audience, so if anybody's got any questions, please prepare. And Sergey's got 2 seconds, Sergey. I guess the last question would be, if you... I guess, where are you seeing some really interesting innovation? You're maybe seeing it within the music world, but have you got any kind of hot picks at the moment that you're keeping an eye on?
Well, I have an investment in a music magazine. Print as well as digital, but it's print, it's real. You can touch it, feel it, read it, smell it. Fantastic. It's called Electronic Sound Magazine, so it kind of fits my love of electronic music and music in general. And it comes out every month, and it's on the shelves of W. Smith's and all the supermarkets, and it has if you buy it online, you get a free 7-inch vinyl. It comes with it every month, so that's cool, doing that. Of course, my record label's going to do amazing things.
Great stuff.
So, and I've already got things lined up. So I've just done a collaboration, which is actually dusting down some of the other things I used to do many years ago. So I've just done a collaboration with Wolfgang Fleur from Kraftwerk. So I've written and produced one of his new singles, which is come out on my label.
There we go. Nice.
Yeah.
Amazing. Any questions? Got one from Sergey, Richard at the front. Let's go, Richard. You're right at the front. You earned it. Go for it.
Well, my question was one of the earliest slides. You had your band there, and there was 4 members in the band, and then went down to 3. So I wonder whether there was an efficiency drive. and leading on from that, and just the size of your data systems. How many people were involved in it? And it was all your money. You didn't get external investment in it.
No.
And did you think that held you back at all?
Right, in order of 5 went to 3, because one of the guitarists, a guy called Steve, was also a very talented mechanic, and he just got engaged, and his girlfriend or fiancée said, "You're not going to get a recording contract and go down to London," so he went. And then 4 of us then went to London. So actually 4 of us signed to RCA, and 1 left with musical indifferences within weeks, and it became 3. So that's that answered. And the other one was
numbers of people in your data center services.
Yes, so it's we employed at the top. We employed just over 20, and averaging about 15, 16 on it. We didn't need any more than that, because we built networks. We built into data centers, then we built into parks, and once they were built, it was about remotely offering the service. So it was a very, I built a system and platforms for it to be as light touch as possible. So on the technical side, so we could just put all our efforts into the relationship side, because your data service was much about the relationship of how we delivered to the customer, and that was a fixation of mine, that we had to be damn good at what we did, and we had to be the best partner you can be. And I used to always say to our clients that it's very easy to pick a technology partner when everything's going right. It's when it goes wrong and the shit hits the fan, that's when you realise you got the wrong one or the right one. And if you back us, we were the right one, because we were always there for our customers, come hell or high water, 24 hours a day on it. I used to still take phone calls from chief executive of Yacht Racecourse, bring me up, We've got a big race on tomorrow and somebody's not working. I'll bring the engineers. I didn't mind that. I was great on it. And I suppose one of the things that I could have done would have been to take equity investment directly and build. There was a huge gold rush has been happening for the past sort of 10 years and building out fibre. And I was courted by various equity companies in London for us to do that, because we were primed to do it, because we had an active layer, and to build out the non-active part, the fibre in the ground, was a perfect marriage on it. But it wasn't for me. I didn't see it didn't excite me. And I just had some really deep conversation. I had a conversation with one guy who actually backed City Fibre, and he sat down with me and he said, "Look, Mark, I can give you 500 million tomorrow, and we can build out." And he came back with an offer about 3 or 4 times, and I turned it down because I didn't want to. It wasn't me. I couldn't run a business doing that, So it's no regrets.
Sorry? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Warren, first of all, thank you very much for sharing your journey. I think it's amazing. It's very unique and very beautiful blend of creativity and technology. And you said yourself that you have, like, with this sort of, you're a creative person and building a technology company, you had this kind of possibility to look at it at a different angle. And with all that experience, and with all this like creativity and technology blend in you, I want to ask for advice, and I will frame it this way. So if you were today to invest into a technology startup, let's say out of York, so can you name like 1 or maybe ideally 3 sort of verticals, like specialization sectors where you see the most opportunities? I don't know, is it like AI startup, biotech, or maybe recording studio booking software, or something else? What would be the 3 areas that you think are like really great opportunities?
I think anything that fits into automation, anything that fits into the golden world of AI, which we know doesn't really existed for many, many years. It's just machine learning. Anything within that field that you can wrap something around is going to work if you get the right team and you build the right platform, making life easier for other platforms. So within coding, being able to kind of build something that's turnkey for someone, for the masses at the end of the day, because there's a huge opportunity and people want to be able to capitalize on it, but some individuals, some companies, some large companies haven't necessarily got the expertise within house to do it. So if you can build something that automates and it's off the shelf. It's very similar when I was putting the stuff together for the sale of the mood stuff. I looked at various different things out there, and I could have sat down and spent many hours toiling away and building something myself, or getting friends in I know that do those sort of things. But I discovered a company in the States called Bandzoogle, and they're like Squarespace for the music industry, and it's off the shelf, and the whole interface with e-commerce platform specifically for downloads and music and tying it together. Buy the album, you get a free download. It just all happens. It works. The payments come in, get delivered to the bank. It's all one off a shelf, one-stop product. I wish I'd come up with that. Absolutely brilliant, and I'm a firm believer in niches, and that's a fantastic niche. You don't have to come up with something that's going to cure the world. You just come up with something that's going to cure your neighborhood.
Thank you.
Sure, go ahead.
I have a question. I love the talk, and I also love Mo filters as well. So I run an education company. We're in 190 countries. We deal with pre-literate kids. So everything's done through songs and music.
Right.
And so far, because we give the program away to developing countries. Like this morning, I was talking in Afghanistan. We're trying to get back into 5,000 of our schools, and we sell the product in developed world. And if I get the maths right, it all pays for itself, hopefully.
Yeah.
It used to do when we sell CDs, the songs on CDs, we sold millions of dollars of CDs, and then I noticed the pirates were downloading it, so I thought, okay, let's sell downloads. So we sold that, and that worked really well as well. But now we're having a struggle is how to make the numbers work in the streaming subscription sort of world. I can't figure out the business model to make it work in that new thing.
Well, in the streaming side of things, you're not going to make any money. Just accept it. It's not going to happen. What you can do is you can spend time getting to touch your customer better and have a wraparound service. It's the personal wraparound is going to make the difference on it. So it's almost that the physical product becomes the additional thing, because that's all pervasive. Everyone can get it. It's and as you rightfully say, when there was the change from CDs to downloads was forced upon the industry because of Napster. And Apple had to come up with something that was so compelling and so cheap that it would become a knee-jerk reaction to it. But then, on the back of that, along comes Spotify. It was just the devil incarnate for the music industry, completely obliterating it, destroying something that it feeds off. And it's a model that just does not work at all. It works for them, absolutely fantastic. But when you have a chief exec of a company that earns more money than every single one of their artists combined, there's something wrong. And I think, again, something that runs through everything I do and is part of my being is about doing the right thing. But always do the right thing where you can. And he's not doing the right thing. So it's immoral. And I think we should have morals when we build businesses. That's my personal rant over. But it's about personalisation. You wrap a personalised wrap around that product, then it becomes something that's tangible and sticky, and people will revisit.
Is that like, what does that mean? Like coaching and things, or
it is. It's having the relationship. That it's that aftercare service. Yeah. So they're not just buying something and throwing it away. It's having that aftercare, and this is where there's huge new opportunities in the music industry at the grassroots level. So there's never been a better time for independent artists, because all the tools are there to sell direct to the customer base. But you can also build a relationship with the customer as well. We did some pre-sale stuff with them, the Mood release, and we're selling all over the world immediately on pre-sales. It was, and we done various kind of interviews and things. We know with those kind of in each area, small YouTube channel has got 10,000 viewers on it or subscribers. But it's a dedicated channel. You're getting to about 90% of those 10,000. And if you sell 300 or 400 copies from that interaction, that's the difference. It's having a wraparound. It's a challenge, for sure. But if you've got something unique, the recording bit of the product is just the support tool, and what you're selling is your insight, your knowledge, your services.
Thank you.
I was born and raised in Suffolk, and in 2010 I was running an e-commerce agency there in my many younger years. Back then everyone was hosting their websites either directly on servers in Docklands or with a company called Rackspace. And a little company emerged called Bytemark, who I saw on your map, and I was quite intrigued to see. And we were one of the early adopters, I think, of Bytemark. And it was quite interesting. They were based outside of London. They're based in York, and then opened another location in Manchester. And I saw them on your York data map. Do you think York data what was your relationship with Bytemark? Do you think you played a big part with your infrastructure in them?
More than you think. We were one of their biggest customers. We developed a POP inside their data center, so we were part of their business model for building that data center, because we were an anchor. So we put a lot of kit into there, and had a very good relationship, to the point that one of their founders is my CTO. Well, I say my. The company had a sole CTO, so he'd been working for Yacht Data Services for the past 3 years plus. So so very tight, on that side of it. But,
it's interesting to see. It's a small world, isn't it?
it is a very small world, yeah.
I think you'll be sticking around, hopefully.
I was interested in, when we were chatting beforehand, we were talking about, the saturation you had of local customers. What customer acquisition, was that mostly referral, or were you outbounding, or how were you getting that business?
After 21 years, we never had a sales force. It was all recommendation.
Right.
Yeah,
It was all
all referrals. Yeah, our customers selling us to other people on it, and then you get to a point where you get to a size where you just start to get things coming your way on it, and we just got better at converting on it. And again, it was the way I trained everyone. And we used to do a lot of in-house training as well, because I had been through the growth of the business of when you get bigger, you've got to get engineers, and you get engineers, they've got experience, and then you suddenly find that those engineers are just using you as a hopping part for their career. So you invest in them, and then they say thank you very much, and off they go. And it's harder to get the next one in. So we built our own in-house academy. So I used to hire people from, the best thing I ever had with the Yacht Air Service was when John Lewis shut down. I hired their salespeople to become my account managers. So I hired them to look after our existing customer base. And then when customers used to ring up, we could convert we were a really high conversion rate. It was something ridiculous, about 80% of the things that came in, we converted on it. Because we just did a very good job. And I always jumped into everyone, we're only as good as the last thing we did, and we have to be damn good at it all the time. It's and when you build something like for Yacht Racecourse, for example, we built all the comms in there. So all the lines going in, all the secondary lines, every Wi-Fi access point. So we had 120 access points across the course, 75 switches. And actually we ended up with 3 separate fibres coming in different directions on it, because it's a big concern when the races are going, and you don't want it falling over, and it has fallen over in the past, and we've been on it to do it. We looked after people like Gear for Music, for example. We built in systems to them for primary and secondary lines, where predominantly when you're building stuff like that from a business's perspective, you would predominantly go to one supplier for a primary and a supplier for secondary, and they came to us for everything, because we would build it in a way that it worked, and have transparency to what we're doing. And we get transparency, you get trust. And the beauty about it is that when you have trust from a customer, they'll come back to you for other ideas that they're doing, and they'll come back and they'll recommend you to. So when we did with Yacht Racecourse, we ended up winning 8 other racecourses in the north of England. Wow. So, yeah, off the back of that.
Pretty good with no sales team. That's good. Go ahead, Louise.
Hi, Mark. I'm interested in what you said before about your businesses. You didn't quite say this, but not shouting loudly and proudly about what they do. And that is something in my day job at the council I hear a lot. And I see a lot of amazing businesses. But why do you think that is? Is that a York thing?
That is a York thing, yes, very much a York thing. But also just a business thing, because there's a lot of businesses in York that are not really York-centric, so therefore there's no need for them to talk to other people in York, because they're getting business from wherever else in the world it is. You've got to look at the people who were here previously. This was Anaplan, who have now moved across the city, one of our customers. And they got no reason to ever shout about it. So because Michael is very gracious, and he comes and does talks and things like that on it, but kind of after the event. Richard, you had a company that was other customers, Agility, multi-channel, hugely successful company in York. And if it wasn't the fact that you're a customer of ours, I would never know about you on it. But so it's very classic, isn't it? Because there's no need. Why should you talk about it? Because we get on with business. But we just need a way of, harnessing it. The creative community are very good at promoting themselves, but the creative side, by its mere nature, is more cottage industry than industry. There's always exceptions to those rules, but generally, the map of the creative industries across York are quite small businesses. So they get on with each other and they talk to each other, and so you get all that. That's the goodness that comes out of it. Bigger businesses don't. They have closed doors and they just get on with life. We need a way of prizing those doors open. And the same with the universities. They should be, showing us the things that they're doing, things that they're working on, and you can have that light bulb moment and get involved with it.
Great. I think that's us at time, so we'll stick to it. Thank you so much to Mark. If we get a round of applause for Mark, please.